And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our June virtual user group. It's hard to believe we are already halfway through 2026. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to join us today. We've got a lot of great content lined up for you. We have two of our Gold Support uh, uh, reps that are with us today that are going to be talking with you. And I know they both say Peggy Jones up there, but one is Peggy Jones and one is Rob Palmer. So they're going to be presenting for you today, and they've got a lot of great content lined up, and we're excited to hear from them. But before I turn it over to them, a couple of things I want to go over with you guys, some housekeeping. As usual, the webinar is being recorded, so you will receive a copy of the recording later today, along with any resources, presentations that we are able to share with you guys that will also be in that email with the link to the recording. If you have any questions for Peggy or Rob throughout their presentation, please submit those through the Q&A. There will be plenty of time for us to address all of those questions, and Peggy and Rob will make sure that they get everyone answered. So just submit those through the Q&A, and we'll get to those when we can. And with that, I am going to share with you guys a couple of marketing updates and reminders for y'all, just to remind you guys that these resources are available to you. So like I said, today we have Peggy Jones and Rob Palmer, part of our Gold Support team. And today we're going to be talking about why you need to be upgrading to the new WebFOCUS 9.3. So they're going to give you all the ins and outs, the whys and the hows, and we're looking forward to hearing from them here shortly. But I want to remind you guys, IBI.com. Again, this is kind of your one-stop shop, all things IBI. If you haven't been out to our website, please, give it a visit every now and then. A lot of great stuff out there for you guys, including a lot of new blogs that we're posting, data sheets that are out there. All of our IBI events are posted out there, whether they're virtual or in person. We also can access our resource library, where you can find all of our recordings from previous Focus Fridays or virtual user groups, so you can see those on demand. Plus, you can access our IBI support site. The e-delivery is out there. You also can access the community and our education platform. So again, one-stop shop. Be sure to give it a visit every now and then, see what you're missing if you need to find something. I did just mention you can access the support portal from IBI.com. So if you are having an issue and need to put in a ticket for support, you can do so very easily from there. In the support portal, you also can find our product downloads, a lot of useful links that may be helpful to you. Our documentation site is out there. Any new product notifications will be posted out there as well. And then again, you would access your assistance from a technical support representative. Again, I mentioned webinars. All of our Focus Fridays virtual user groups are posted out there for you guys to sign up for. You also should be receiving the invites via email, but if you're not, and I'll get to that in a second, I need to know, but you can also register for them out there. And then we also have any of our in-person events are posted out there as well. And you can register for those, and then you can find past recordings in the on-demand section. So that leads me to our in-person event. So this year, we are super excited about our IBI Summit 2026. It is just around the corner for a 2-day event in New York City, August 24th, 25th. I hope you guys can join us. We are super excited about this event. We have got a great agenda lined up. We've got some great speakers that are coming who are going to be a part of this. Seats are filling up pretty fast. So again, we'd love to have you guys join. If you have any questions about Summit, want more information about it, I am happy to have that discussion with you. If you need some justification letters to send to your managers, I'm happy to provide those for you. The agenda is live. You can check that out so you can see what we're hosting. We've got a lot of breakout sessions that are available, pretty much something for everybody. And like I said, we're super excited that this is a 2-day event. So makes it worth your while to head up to New York and come see us there. So again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And we hope that you guys will be there. And as I mentioned here, so we want you, why you should attend Summit. A couple of things that you will get to see. You're going to get to see our roadmap. You're going to hear executive insights from Dan and Ali and leadership. You'll have direct access to experts. We will have the expert room with a lot of our great IBI experts on hand to discuss your challenges with you. And then of course the networking part of it. You can't miss, having that network opportunity with your industry peers and other folks that will be there. So again, just more reasons why we'd love to have you guys at Summit this year. Okay, community. If you guys are not a part of the community, we highly suggest and recommend you joining. It is completely free to join, and we'd love to have you in there. A lot of great content and conversations are going on inside the community. For those of you who have been around IBI for a very long time, you remember we had something called Focal Point way back in the day. So this community has taken the place of Focal Point. So a lot of those threads and conversations are still going on out here. We also have our experts who are posting articles out here for you guys, and keeping up with the conversations. And Patrick, who is part of our ATS team, is our moderator out there and is very involved with a lot of discussions with you guys. So again, would love to have you guys part of the community if you're not, and it's a great resource for you. IBI Education, we did launch our IBI Education platform last year. So we're pretty much at a year now. This is another great resource for you guys if you need training, if you have new people starting with your organization who want to get their feet wet with WebFOCUS or Focus or Mainframe or whatnot. We have all of the courses out there. Every quarter, we are adding new content. So if you already are in the platform, be sure to be checking it out each new quarter because new content is being uploaded out there. If you are not in the education platform and you would like to be, please contact me and I'm happy to help get you set up in there and get you access so you can start all of your training needs. Social media, if you guys are on social, we'd love to have a follow. We're on LinkedIn, X, and we have a YouTube channel. So if you'd like to stay in the know and see what's going on with IBI and hear what we have coming, be sure to just give us a follow on all three of these channels and you will see. Also on our YouTube channel, you can also find our on-demand recordings from Focus Fridays and virtual user groups as well. I mentioned earlier regarding emails, we do send out invites for all of our events that we have. We also have a monthly newsletter that we send out. So if you are not receiving any of that stuff from us, please let us know. I'd love to check and see if there is a glitch with your contact in our system and see if we can get you receiving all of our updates from IBI. So please let me know if you're not receiving any of those. There's two programs that I was going to talk about today, but one of them I'm not going to steal from Peggy and Rob, which is the WebFOCUS Upgrade Program. They are going to be talking about that here shortly. But I'm going to quickly just give you guys a glimpse into the AI Bootcamp, which is another program that we do have. This is an opportunity to learn from the experienced professionals and our AI gurus. You will gain practical insights and you get personalized support with this program. We'd love for you to secure your spot and jumpstart your AI journey. This will allow you to develop those expertise in this critical area. So we know AI is super hot right now. A lot of organizations diving in and looking into AI. So we want to keep you ahead of the curve on this. So if you're interested in learning more about the AI Bootcamp, please let us know. You can fill it out on the evaluation form or just contact us and we'll get you in touch with the team. All right. With that, if you guys need anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help. That is what we're here for. And so with that, though, I am going to turn it back over to Peggy.
Thanks so much, Shay. Good morning, everyone. We're going to split the WebFOCUS 9.3 upgrade into two sections. Rob and I are going to present together. So the first section that I'm going to talk about, pardon me, There we go. The first section I'm going to cover is upgrading your installation. And then once we complete that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob and he'll talk to you about upgrading your application. So for WebFOCUS 9.3, I'm going to present a few reasons why you should upgrade and then some technical details on how to do that upgrade of the software. And there's two different areas here. If you're on 8.207.28 or above release-wise, or if you're on a release prior to 8.207.28. So if you're on one of those releases and you have not moved to anything in the 9 series, a few things that I just want to help point out that are very important reasons why you should be upgrading. Any older release like 8.207.28 or 9.0, both of those releases were end of support in September and December of 2025 respectively. 9.1 we've also published will be end of support in 2027. If you happen to be on an 8.1 or an 8.0 release, those releases are 10 years old or more. It's really critical that your production applications are on a supported release because you take the risk of getting an issue or potentially a security risk, and we will not be able to fix or patch those releases because they are end of support. In addition to that, being on 9.3, 9.3 is a long-term supported release. It definitely is going to offer you more stability, more maintenance, and it includes all of the security maintenance fixes that we know of to date and address ongoing in service packs and releases. You'll also be able to utilize any of the new features. We've added a lot of modernization. We've closed a lot of the gaps between our App Studio and IA tools, added tremendous amount of features and functionality in Designer. We've also added a lot of machine learning. The hub page gives you that collaborative approach. You can access your reporting server, things that you weren't able to do in that front end old client GUI that you can do today. And then a tremendous expansion of authoring capabilities throughout the UI tools. So the hub is definitely going to give you a lot more, as well as with the designer UI tools, the benefits of using the latest UI and the features and functionalities and presenting a much more modern presentation of pages and dashboards and portals, and utilizing all of the new enhancements and abilities in that. For anything that is A207 or above regarding your upgrade, customers who are 8207 or above, being a 9.0 or 9.1 or even a 9.2, you can absolutely perform an in-place upgrade where the software resides today. You can upgrade directly to 9.37. That repository upgrade will be performed during the installation. But you also have an option of doing a new install of the 937 software. And during that installation, you can select to connect to an existing repository and then not initialize it, and then upgrade the repository with our Liquibase utility in the 9.3 utilities folder. And you can upgrade that after the install completes. A couple benefits for new installations. They do give you the ability to keep your existing install and do a side-by-side comparison. So if you keep the existing, say you have a 9.0 today, and then you do a new 9.3, you can do unit testing on both, check and compare, hit the same data sources, make sure your pages or portals or reports or charts, everything looks exactly as it should, and there's no issues. It's also an option to roll back. So if you do have something that you hit and you're going to miss a deadline, or you need to stop and then revisit again, you can roll back because you'll have that environment that hasn't been touched because you chose the later installation. The later install, the individual installation also will give you that later version of Tomcat that would be packaged with WebFOCUS. And also a new installation would allow you, if you have to do an OS platform change, let's just say you're going from on-prem RHEL to RHEL in Azure or AWS, or you're moving from Windows to RHEL, something like that, then you can do a new installation, keep your existing install, and install new on your new platform. And one of the other things that I've encountered a lot with customers is sometimes they are doing a repository change, sometimes in connection with the platform change, sometimes just independent of the platform change. But you may be using like a SQL or Oracle repository today. You may want to go to a Postgres type repository, which is highly used in a lot of our customers who are doing cloud installations in either AWS or Azure. So I think a new installation will give you some of those benefits that may lean more towards an ease of comparison back to your old environment. And especially with a repository type change, if you have your old environment using your existing environment repository and a new install with the newer repository, if there's an issue that's repository specific, it'll be easier to debug and highlight with the two installs being side by side. Okay. If you're below A20728, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight here. Our IBI engineering team is working on a utility to facilitate that repository upgrade for older releases. In the past, you probably have seen in our documentation where we had to do an interim hop. This utility will allow you to go from like the early 8.0s to 9.3 directly as a standalone utility. So that is in the works, and we will keep you guys updated when that will be available for you. If you are on one of these older releases now, what I would encourage you to do is register for the WebFOCUS upgrade program. As part of that program, we assess your environment. We will coordinate you with our teams, give you some upgrade path options, and even give you some custom recommendations. If you're not familiar with the WebFOCUS upgrade program, there is a fact sheet that will give you the details. This is the URL to the fact sheet itself. And for the program itself, just so you're aware, you basically will take a self-assessment. You can register for the upgrade program. We encourage you to open a case, and we will provide to you our discovery tool. You run that discovery tool on the reporting server component and the WebFOCUS client component, and that will give you detailed reports. Those reports, that information from those reports are then used in the self-assessment. We'll then take that information and we'll connect back with you. We kind of score it. We give you kind of a complexity score of your upgrade path, depending on the release and what we find in your self-assessment information. But then we'll give you our insight, what we would recommend, and what the program would offer, and how you can upgrade faster. So that self-assessment, we connect back with you directly. We give you the complexity score. We can discuss next steps with you directly. We will set up a meeting. And then there's also an option here. We have a free workshop. We'll present that information to you and get you a customized recommendation for your upgrade journey. We also, some of that, if you have the manpower to do that on your own, we can definitely give you those recommendations where you and your teams can do that. But if you don't have the manpower, or if you've lost manpower who supported these applications or installations, we do have PS partners that we can engage you with to help facilitate and do that upgrade in collaboration with you or directly. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, Rob, and let you share as you talk about the application pieces of this.
Thanks, Peggy. So I'm going to talk about upgrading your application using a methodology and an approach that I've used for 40 plus years across multiple updates. Start off talking about how you define and determine what it is you're upgrading. So what specifically taking an inventory. Talk about how to plan, how to plan, track, and document your upgrade, and approach to testing and remediation that I've used, as I said, over the years. And then finally, what to do when you're ready to go live and how IBI will support you in your go live activities. So let's start with the inventory. Application inventory you need to know what you're upgrading. How big is it? How wide is it? How deep is it? The first thing I ask a customer when they're planning an upgrade is show me your documentation. Now, invariably, you get mixed results with that question. Most often, there is not great documentation that could easily lay out what your application looks like end to end to help you determine where you need to test, potentially remediate, and eventually complete your upgrade. So luckily, we do have some tools that will help you get there if you haven't got that documentation already in place. The nice thing about our tools is it also might leave you with a little bit of documentation at the end of the upgrade that you can leverage going forward. Peggy already talked about the upgrade program and registering for that and getting the discovery tool. So I'm going to show you the discovery tool and what it provides you that you can then directly use, not just to do the self-assessment that's part of the upgrade program, but also to help you take a complete inventory of your environment so that you can plan your upgrade accordingly. So the discovery tool, as Peggy said, you register for the upgrade program and you're given the discovery tool. You need to install and run it. There is a WebFOCUS client component and a WebFOCUS reporting server component. There's documentation how to do the install and how to run it. And what it generates for you are a number of reports. Those reports, in addition to helping you assess the upgrade, will help you complete your inventory, which I believe is mandatory to have a good inventory laid out so that you know what it is you're ultimately going to be testing and upgrading. Let's talk about the WebFOCUS client side. There's two reports that come out of the WebFOCUS client discovery tool. The first one I find kind of useful. It gives you kind of a good snapshot of the things that are in your client. The number of folders, the number of procedures, the number of HTML pages. And one I like is the number of reportcaster jobs, how many jobs you've got. Because a lot of people, when I ask them how much reportcaster, I usually get, oh, we have hundreds or we have thousands. Well, no, in my case, this is my environment, which is kind of small, but I know what I have. I have 16 jobs, 13 are active and 3 are inactive. I'm not guessing, oh, I got 20 or so. I'm told what I have. So this is kind of giving you a layout of what you've got. How much caster you've got, how many reports you got, how many pages you have, how many portals you have, the different kinds of portals as portals have evolved over the years. All of this can help you understand what you're facing and what you need to do to plan your upgrade. The second client report is a list of all the components across the entire repository and the last time they were modified. Now, this can be useful for a couple of reasons. One, it gives you a full inventory of your repository. Now, I admit in an HTML display, that might be a little difficult to work with. What I've done is I just take this, drop it into Excel, and I start to build what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, my tracking sheets. Because these are the things you need to ultimately make sure are working and providing the right outcomes for your users after the upgrade. I also like the last modified date. It gives you an indication of when things were last changed. And just because they're old doesn't mean they're not used, because something may have written years ago, it's still part of your application. The nice thing about this, though, is you start to get into the old user folders and things that are created by users ad hoc. If you look at the last modified date, you get a sense, okay, this stuff's really old. You look over on the first column, it was created in a folder that this user owned, and they left the company 10 years ago. Good indication, maybe we don't need to upgrade that. Maybe we don't need to even consider it as part of our inventory. And I'm going to talk about just a second, how you deal with that. So nice little report, your full repository, all components, and when they were last touched. There's a number of reports on the server side that come out of the server-side discovery tool. I'm going to talk about a couple in detail. I'm not going to go through them all in great detail. First one is, or the first two are a list of all the folk execs and all of the synonyms and the last time they were updated for those that have been modified in the last 6 months. Kind of useful to give you a sense of what's been worked on, although not really a good indication of your inventory because, as I said, things that haven't been touched in 6 months doesn't mean they're obsolete. They're still part of your environment. They might fully be in production. They just haven't needed to be changed in 6 months. but it does give you an idea where your activity is on your server, in particular, the synonyms. A lot of customers don't have a lot of folk execs on this server. They may all be in the repository, but your synonyms, your master files are all on the server. Getting a sense of what kind of data you've got as you do your upgrade is critical. And I'll give you another report coming up in a second that really drives that home. There's a report that gives you how many applications you have in your path and how many you don't. It's information. It's useful. I'm not sure it's the most important from gathering your inventory, but at least you know what your path has and what your path doesn't have. Now, paths can change. Profiles can change paths. So take this one for what it is. It's just telling you what your profile is saying at the moment the discovery tool was run. All right, now we get into a little bit more interesting. We get total number of folk execs and the total number of synonyms or master files in each of your applications. What this helps me understand is, where's my volume? Which application folders have the most stuff? Which ones have the most folk execs? Which ones have the most synonyms? Because that's where I'm going to have to make sure everything is working after I upgrade. Also helps you identify, okay, some of these, we're not using that one anymore. There's not much in that one. Maybe we don't need it. This is all leading into, I'm going to talk about in a second, which is application clutter, things that are just not required. These reports not only give you an insight into what your inventory looks like, but what might be clutter, and we need to avoid getting it in the way of our upgrade activities. Okay, this one I really like. This is telling me what my data types are. On the left is looking at it by application. So within each of my application folders, what kind of data, by querying the suffix and the synonyms, what kind of data am I working with? I like the one on the right, though. The one on the right is not immediately available with the discovery tool, but the discovery tool on the server are just folk execs running reports. So I amended one with like 2 lines of code, and I got a list across my entire server environment, every single data type that I'm using and how many synonyms have that. When I do an upgrade assessment for a customer, the first thing I want to know, or one of the first things I want to know, is what kind of data are you using? So looking at this, I can see in my environment, I'm using a lot of SQL Server. I've got a lot of DB2, so I'm getting a sense of where my data is. And the nice thing about this, if I see something that's a little bit obscure that I didn't even know we were still using, that may tell me, okay, I got something I got to look at in my testing to make sure that everything's still behaving, because I may be using something that's relatively ancient in terms of data pit technology, but still actively part of my application. So the discovery tool is giving me that information. What kind of data am I accessing? Here's another report showing me the number of files that I have. Interesting, but I prefer slight change I made to that report to show me the number of file types by application folder. This is something I always do when I'm planning an upgrade. I want to see what I've got out there. And do I have anything out there that I'm not really sure what it is? And is it something I need to go and specifically look at for my testing? So you can see I've got a whole bunch of effects. I can see, and in that column, I can see where they're concentrated. Got a lot in this folder and a lot in this folder. So I've got to plan for whatever we're testing there, and minimal elsewhere. I know where all my synonyms are. And then I've got other data types. Now, some of these are blank because I only snapshotted the top of this report, but these things show up in other application folders. So where's my stuff? What do I have? And what do I need to concern myself with as I plan my upgrade? All of this is intended to allow you to determine what your effort might be to do the upgrade. And more importantly, in my perspective from remediation and testing, where do I need to concentrate? All right. Let's talk just a little bit about clutter. Clutter in your environment is one of my pet peeves. Clutter is just unnecessary and obsolete components that are just getting in the way. If you do just a count of what you have, I've had customers, and they know it, but it's still there, have 30-40% of their environment is clutter. Right? It leads to unnecessary testing if you don't identify it as clutter. And worst case, you're testing it and you're remediating it, but it's not part of your active application, but it's in the way. With an upgrade, what I like to do is leverage the fact that you're upgrading to help you clean up the clutter. So what happens? How does clutter get created? Well, everybody who's working on a procedure might create a temporary backup right in place. So I look for things with BKP in the name or the file type, words like original, old, new, a date stamp. I look for people's initials or people's names. There are probably 100 reports out there in the world that have RP in their name that I created. I'm hoping they're not in production because that's clutter, right? Folders of people that are no longer in the company that created hundreds of ad hoc reports that they maybe ran once or twice, but they left the company 5 years ago. If they're still in your environment, that's clutter. Application components or major functions that you've since stopped using is still in there. It's clutter. It's getting in the way. It makes your inventory look inflated. And worse, it can help. It may cause you to start inflating your estimates for upgrade because you think what you have is bigger than it is. So to remove it, this is what I do. I do not delete clutter yet. What I do is I mark anything I think is clutter. I mark it, the file name, the folder name, whatever level you're at. I mark it with a prefix of XX underscore. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, by not deleting it, if I'm in testing, we find, oh, we really did need that. I can easily go back and restore it by renaming it, by removing the XX underscore. If you did this with a backup, now you got to go find the backup. You got to restore just that piece of the backup to put it back in your environment. By just marking it for deletion, you can easily unmark it for deletion. And the reason I use a prefix is when you look at your folders, any given folder, all of those components that are marked for deletion are together in the tree. That makes it easier to see them all, to find the one you want to restore. And more importantly, when you're done and you're ready, it allows you to easily delete them all in one swoop. You're not searching for them. I do this even in development, but I'm not going to talk about development practices, but whenever I create a personal backup, even in a development environment, I always prefix it with a standard prefix so that I know where to find it, and then I can get rid of it when I'm done. The best way to avoid clutter is not to create it to begin with. And I get in development, you have to do these things. Don't let them roll to production, but invariably they do. Let's take advantage of the fact that we're upgrading, the fact that we're doing an inventory to remove it. All right. So we've got our inventory. We kind of know what we're doing in terms of our size of our app. There's certain things I always look for as I'm assessing an upgrade, just to determine, one, where I may need to concentrate some immediate testing, and two, what's the complexity of my upgrade? The biggest one is customizations. If you have any customizations that you've developed over time that directly read or write the WebFOCUS repository, or any customizations you've made to shipped WebFOCUS components, or any customizations in JavaScript you've written that access components of WebFOCUS, the JavaScript that we ship, all of those things, if you've done that, you need to concentrate some serious testing on it, because things may change in WebFOCUS, in the repository, in our JavaScript that you were relying on when you created these custom components. You got to make sure they still work and deal with the remediation if they don't. So any customizations, find them, highlight them, and be aware of them. I've had a lot of recent upgrades I've done on very old releases where our SQL translation engine today is much, much more evolved than it was, say, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So if you're doing a very old upgrade, just be aware of SQL translation. I didn't put it on the slide, but when you're testing and remediating, use the SQL traces just to make sure that you're getting the same translations you got in the old release. And if you're getting different translations, make sure you're getting the answer you need, because our translation engine has evolved significantly over the last 40 years. Code tightening can catch you, so just be aware if something's not working quite the way you think it said, just make sure you syntactically wrote it correctly the first time. I've seen a lot of code that was written years ago, which is not 100% syntactically correct, but it still worked, right? Ideally, it was written syntactically correct to begin with, but subtle differences may have worked. Code tightening has caught them. Just be aware of it. So it's something to watch for as you're doing your testing. Any includes or executions that use the repository, if you're hopefully not, but if you're upgrading from a pre-repository, means a pre-8 release, your references on drill downs and your references on dash includes may need to be amended to reference the repository address as opposed to what they used to be prior to 8. So again, things to be aware of. Right? This list is not things that are going to break. This list is things to be aware of. And I'll talk about how you use this in just a second. Interactions with the operating system and the file system. Now, your OS may be changing, or you got to make sure that in your new environment, the files are available, or you just got to make sure things are still working. So any interaction with OS and the file system, just be aware of it. Any custom security, you got to implement the same way. HTML forms that you develop using App Studio should be okay, but be aware, and it's a common practice, especially 10, 15 years ago, people would go in and manipulate those generated HTML from our tools in code. They might have worked with one upgrade. They might have worked with a second upgrade. You may have issues as you get to current releases if they were tinkered with under the covers. Be aware of it, and specifically test your forms to make sure that hasn't happened. You'll get an error message if it was tinkered with as you try to open it. So you want to watch for that. And then finally with Reportcaster, just make sure when you're testing your Reportcaster schedules that all of your distribution methods are working. Make sure your email server is working before you test it. Make sure your FTP server is working before you test it. The last thing you want to do is have users test Caster and then have 100 jobs fail and recorded it as 100 issues when all it was one issue. Your email server wasn't configured correctly. Don't fall into the trap where you think there's 100 issues, but there's only one issue. And once you solve that one issue, the 100 go away. So make sure all of that is up and running before you test the components that are dependent on it. This is not a complete list. You may have other things that you'll come across, but just watch for those things that you think, I just need to make sure those are still working. The biggest one, though, is customizations. All right, test plan and tracking sheet. You should create a test plan. Now, I'm not going to lay out what your test plan should look like. You've probably got standard methodologies you use for creating test plans, or you have project managers that get assigned to run the upgrade job and they've got their methodologies. A couple of things, though, I want to make sure you include in your test plan from the perspective of a WebFOCUS upgrade. Make sure part of your testing is to open up those components that were created in tools, open them up in the current versions of those tools. Because that includes Designer, Info Assist, the HTML canvas, the document composer, and data migrator, any of your flows. Just make sure they open. The reason you want to do that is you're not just testing your application runs. That's the user experience. You also need to verify that the developer experience is working as well. And part of that is using these tools to open up the components that make up your application. So you want to make sure they still work. And sometimes you'll need to open it up and save it to make the migration complete. So you want to test those as well. And then the final role you want to test is the administrator experience. Make sure the administrator is comfortable and knows how to do their job in the new environment. Now, depending on the gap from your old to your new, that experience might look different. If you're doing like an upgrade from 9.2 to 9.3, the experience is going to look pretty similar. But if you're coming from, say, an early 8 to a 9.3, that experience might be different. So as part of your testing, make sure you include testing the user experience, the developer experience, and the administrator experience. It's not just enough that the app still runs. You still got to be able to maintain it, and you still got to be able to administer it. All of those should be part of your test plan. I also recommend creating a tracking sheet. A tracking sheet is basically lay out your application as based on the use cases, based on the flow of the application, lay it out so you know what you need to test. I'll give you some examples in just a second. But for example, you might have a portal. So you got to test this portal. This portal has 3 tabs in it. Those tabs have these components in it. Each of these components has potential drill down. It needs to be styled. If you lay out that sheet, and it could take you a few days to do this, I guarantee you it will pay off in the end. I did a recent upgrade where it took me about 4 days to lay out the tracking sheet. The tracking sheet, though, allowed me to track where my issues were and when I completed testing and remediation and could call this done. And then when I looked at my sheet, if I color coded my status and I looked at a sheet that was green, all right, that portal is done. Let's move on. You get one quick visual of how well your testing is going. The other nice thing about creating a sheet to do this, now I've used Google Sheets. The reason I like Google Sheets for this purpose is the collaborative nature of it. You can have multiple people looking, working, acting at the same time. You can use Excel as well. The nice thing about Google Sheets is it's immediately collaborative. You can also use these sheets to put in comments and notes. I just saw an example here. I've got an issue on one of my components, and I put in a note, very simple note. This says filter's not working. So now I'm not only tracking my progress in testing individual components, I'm communicating and recording issues and comments directly in the tracking sheet. Okay. So I said, the time spent to build this up front will pay dividends later. And also, when you're done the upgrade, a pretty good layout doc of your application. So you can leverage it moving forward. Just a few simple examples for portals. I'll create a sheet that has multiple columns in it, potentially multiple tabs, and just track, what my portal is, what section is, how many sections does it have, how many tabs are on each section, are there links, what's the content, and then did the styling work right? Does it look good? Are my filters working? Are my drill downs working? And then I always put a comments at the end of each of my tracking sheets just for anything else I may think of that's useful and relevant to the upgrade. Reports might have slightly different looks based on what it is, and Report Caster might have different columns that you want to test and track. And this is not an exhaustive list. Create whatever tracking sheets you feel you need to track your components. The nice thing is when something's working, you just mark it complete or you mark it tested, whatever words you want to use. And I use the color coding to give me a visual. It's green. We're good to go. Highly recommend you spend the time up front, even if it takes you a few days to do it, because it will help you track your progress and it will give you some doc at the end. It'll also give you something you can use immediately when your next upgrade comes along. All right, let's talk about testing and remediation. I like a multi-pass approach. Right, so we won't go through it here. We'll go each one individual. So pass one, I like to do what I call a very wide but a very shallow initial testing and remediation. And what do I mean by wide? What kind of things are you using in WebFOCUS? Do you have reports, charts, portals, caster, data migrator, compound reports? Anything you may have that you want to make sure is still working as part of the upgrade. Test those first. That's the wide. But don't test everything. Do a shallow test of all the major areas. The reason you want to do this is, one, it helps you verify that your installation and configuration are working properly. Because you're testing a couple of caster jobs. Okay, my distribution's working. If you got distribution, email, and FTP, maybe test one of each. All right, email distribution's working. My caster stuff's ready to go. If you've got certain things you've implemented, like customizations or things that, you think, okay, that's kind of unique. We came up with that. I'm not sure anybody else did that. Maybe I'll just test that in the upgrade. You're validating that those are working. If they're not, you're coming up with the remediation up front. What this wide and shallow initial test allows you to do is identify opportunities for early remediation before you release it to your users to execute your test plan. And it comes back to something I said a few minutes ago. You may find a problem. You look at your application. Okay, that problem, it occurs. I'm just using numbers. I'm not just to make the math easy. It occurs 100 times. Okay. If you identify that up front, you fix it. One issue fixed 100 times. If you release it to your users without doing this initial look at things, your users are going to come back with 100 problems. So now you've got 100 issues instead of one issue that occurred 100 times. It's much easier to solve the one issue 100 times than to all of a sudden have an issue log of 100 items in it. The other thing that this approach allows you to do is identify opportunities for mass remediation. And by mass remediation, as you move into phase or past 2, mass remediation is where you understand I've got an issue, I've got to change something. It's in code or it's in a synonym or it's in something that I can touch, a piece of code. It's not buried inside a configuration or something, but it's in code. If I can find all of the occurrences of that problem, maybe I can mass change them to correct them. So now your 100 problems that the users would find, which is now just one, you search and replace and correct them all in an en masse update. I use Notepad++ when I do this for customers, but you can use any tool that will support search and replace. I also like Notepad++, although other tools will do it because of regular expressions. I can get pretty fancy in what I'm doing in my mass replacement by searching for specific occurrences and fixing them. Now, on your reporting server, that's relatively easy to do because it's a file system anyway. The repository is not a file system, but if you take a change management package of your repository, you now have exported your repository by the change management package into files. You can go in to the root content folder, make changes in there, and then re-import that back into your environment, thereby applying any changes you were able to make en masse into the repository as well. Okay. I use this in 2 different ways. I do search. If there's something I'm really not comfortable mass replacing, I'll just use search utilities to find them all, and then I'll just go in and make the fixes I need to make. Still faster than finding them one by one as your test plan's being executed. Find them all, go in and change them. So that's using search to expedite my remediation. Then the best part is when I can use search and replace to actually make the remediation. With one click of a button, I can correct an issue I've got across multiple, many components. Again, one problem solved 100 times, not 100 problems that you need to deal with. I also recommend don't necessarily go in and test them all right. You got to be pretty confident that test one change. Okay, that worked. Mass update it, but don't go in and test all those changes quite yet, because the next step, now you're going to execute your test plan. Now you let your users loose on it. They're going to test all that for you. Okay, so you're taking advantage of an initial pass, an initial remediation of things you know about. Release it to the users to execute your test plan, and then you remediate as they find issues. But don't forget mass remediation, because they could find something you didn't find in your first pass. If they find something always be aware, okay, is that a common problem? Could that be an issue elsewhere? Why don't we take a search, find it, and let's fix it en masse if we can? Again, you're avoiding users finding 100 problems when it's really only one that just needs to be solved 100 times. Much, much easier to solve it 100 times than to have a list of 100. Oh, now you got to go investigate every one of them. So always keep that in mind. You can still do mass remediation. Okay. The other thing you want to do when someone finds an issue, make sure if that issue exists elsewhere, try to figure that out too, because the worst thing you want is two users working with two different developers finding an issue and then remediating it differently. So by making sure that you are consistent in your remediations of any issues you find, everything's going to look consistent at the end. All right. To make sure things stay consistent, I recommend a remediation workbook. A remediation workbook is basically where you document the issues you found and the remediation that you applied. Now, you can bury that in your tracking sheet. I've kind of done that too, where you have a separate tab that has the issues and the remediation. So it's all kind of in one place. But the key to your remediation workbook is if an issue is found and remediated, if that issue is found again, it gets remediated the same way. You document. It also gives you a good audit log of everything you did during the upgrade to make changes to your application. All right, so I highly recommend you document what you're doing as you do your remediation. All right, finally, go live comes around. What you want to do is open up on our support site a go live notification. What that does is it lets our after hours support know there's a go live going on, and it allows you access to our after hours support in a more immediate time frame because they know you're going live. Generally, you do this on the weekends. I mean, if you're doing it during the week, then support's there. But if you're doing it on the weekends or you're doing it, after hours, you want to make sure we know you're going live. So tell us, and then we'll be there to support you. And then if you're doing a side-by-side upgrade and you got your upgraded environment ready to go and you got your old environment ready to not go, you turn off the old and you turn on the new. And you're good to go. So just make sure you tell us because we will support you, but we can't support you if we don't know you're going live. Okay. So to wrap things up, Peggy?
Yep. From the software side, definitely engage in a plan. Determine where you're going to upgrade. If you're going to 9.3.7, same platform, same repository, all the specifics, but get a plan together. If you need our help, if you feel like you can do the upgrade on your own, you're at a higher release and can do an in-place upgrade, absolutely do that. But you can register for the WebFOCUS upgrade program. We can confirm that. We can engage with the IVI team, get you a custom recommendation for the best plan. Also engage with our PS partners to help you do the upgrade or work with you to do it in a collaborative approach. But definitely want to decide on a plan to move forward with your upgrade and get on the most modern release of 9.3.
Okay, and then once you're ready, get to the application side. I can't emphasize enough, plan it. Take the time up front to plan it, even if it takes you a couple of weeks to plan it. Build your tracking sheet. Get a clear inventory. Understand what you're upgrading. Clean up the clutter, and then test and remediate. And there'll be a little bit of a cycling there. Do as much as you can en masse. Be as efficient as possible in your testing and remediation, but track and document what you're doing. It may sound like you're doing extra work. Why are we planning so much? Why are we tracking everything? It will pay off. And the benefit of tracking and documenting your upgrade is you got documentation at the end. Could help you in your ongoing maintenance and will definitely help you with your next upgrade because you've already got it in place. And then go live. Said a few minutes ago, let us know. We will help you get through your go live.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Peggy and Rob. You guys do have some questions in the Q&A. So if you guys want to pop in there for me and let's address some of these for the crowd and go through them.
I'm looking, where do I find the Q&A?
It should be at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar.
So
Oh,
the first one I see is from Eric Rob, talking about the repository audit list and what does the last access date track back to and the last run date. If we're talking about the user audit report list, I believe last access is last login, Rob?
no, the last access date on that report is the last modified date of that component.
Okay, so that's the individual components. That's not the user. Gotcha. Eric, does that answer your question?
And he'll probably respond via the Q&A. And then it looks
Okay.
like he had a follow-up regarding clutter. So if y'all want to take a look
Yeah,
at
that last run date,
okay.
the only way I know of to clearly track that is to have Resource Analyzer turned on. The Resource Analyzer will track what's being executed. The Discovery tool does not have any insight into that. All it's doing is looking at this point in time, what's in the repository and when was it last modified. If you have a need to understand last run date, we have the tool that does that, but that tool has to be enabled to enable us to track that information, which is Resource Analyzer. Now, it's as part of an upgrade, if you're planning an upgrade, a lot of times a customer will turn on Resource Analyzer and run it for a period of time. It can create a lot of data, although you have ways to configure it so you don't track everything that can track. You track what you need to know to understand what's being used in your environment. So you reduce the amount of data that's generated, but it has to be allowed to run for a period of time. I would recommend specifically over key periods like month ends, maybe a quarter end, just to understand what's being executed. But without that tool, nothing else is really tracking what was run. Edit prints can kind of give us insight into that, but you've also got to make sure your edit prints stay around. So nothing I've shown you will tell you the last runtime. Resource Analyzer, that's part of its job. So it would have to be enabled and running.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would add into that is to make sure you enable enough of the options of what you're capturing with RA, and then the standard reports that are there, I think, Rob, you're absolutely right, would give you that last run information. I think the next two questions are not necessarily questions, Jim, but actions that you've chosen to disable the active flag for caster and then enable that, but changing it to something other than Y so the job doesn't run if you've got two parallel environments. And completely agree. I've seen customers do that in the past, and I'm sure you have as well, Rob.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then it looks like y'all did answer Eric's first two questions. So he responded with yes. And then, but now he has a question regarding the remediation time frame, if y'all want to take that one.
Peggy, I'll let you take that one.
Okay. So Eric, this one's a little bit more difficult to answer because unless we know what the issue is, I can't necessarily tell you how complex it will be to fix. But if it is a UC issue or a defect in the product, we do prioritize those and we do our best to provide a fix in the next release, or if it's something critical, we will try to create a hot fix in your release. So like say you have something in 9.3.7 and we're working towards an upcoming 9.3.8 release. If it's critical and we can do it, we could definitely look at potentially looking at a hot fix, but it really depends on how complicated it is. Some of those fixes cannot be made into hot fixes and would have to wait for the next upcoming release. Okay, I see one from Christopher. The discovery tool, is it able to manage use repositories? Yes, I don't know of any reported issues from customers running the discovery tool, and we've had a few that have very large WebFocus repositories. I haven't encountered any, Rob. I don't believe you have either.
No,
Okay.
not that I've seen.
Okay. And Jean, let me make sure I understand. You're looking for a future webinar upgrading from like an early 9.3, like maybe like a 9.3.2 or 9.3.3 to one of the latest versions, aka like a 9.3.7 or an upcoming 9.3. Um, I don't know, Shay, if there's any future webinars planned for that. But what I can tell you, Jean, is the installation documentation for the current 937 does detail those steps. Specifically, I'm not sure architectural changes, if you're asking for things within the product or if you are looking to do an architectural change, meaning go split tier where the client and reporting server on two different servers or changing operating system.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Jean, I will get with the product team and see if it's possible to schedule and put together a webinar that might cover some of that. So TBD on a webinar. Okay, another question from Eric.
Differences between 936 and 937, starting with a new server, SQL 2025. Okay, so SQL 2025, are you looking for use of that as a repository, an adapter, or an adapter? If it's certified on 937, key point here, certification means that our QA team has definitely done the testing and certified that particular SQL Server version 2025. Even though it may not be certified with 936, that does not mean that it is not functional with 936. I can do a quick look in the 936 documentation and look at that for both repository and adapter. So I will take a quick look at that. Let me just look to see if there's a follow-up.
Well, I specifically want to know, is it repository or is it just as an adapter to data?
Right. That's what I was looking at the follow-up data source. Oh, so it's an adapter level. Okay. Let me take a quick peek. I'm just going to, Rob, if you would check just to see if there's any other questions. I'm going to just take a quick peek
Sure.
at 936 for SQL Server 2025 adapter.
Looks like Eric's provided. Eric, I'm going to unmute you so you can just ask these. Let's unmute Eric so maybe he can just have this conversation with us. Where are you, Eric? There you are.
I'm going to stop sharing and see what version, because I have 936 on my machine and SQL Server. So
Eric, I've unmuted you, Eric, so you can.
2532, and it has a bunch of questions that pretty much all relate to 936, SQL 2025, the various OLE and ODBC connectors, and you name it. Because we just want to make sure that A, we're going to be supported, and B, that we're not going to run into any issues, because due to budgeting concerns, we're kind of at a place where we can't make any changes to either one of those endpoints.
yeah, I'm just checking. I just recently installed SQL Server on my machine. And you're accessing it with suffix equals MSSQL or the MSODB, whatever it is. I can't remember.
It should be the MSSQL, yes, sir.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to the point where we can even test it yet because we're still in the process of spinning that server up. We've got to do the data migration from the old server to the new server, and we're just trying to figure out what's going to be our roadblocks moving forward, if any. We know that SQL tends to be kind of backwards compatible with earlier versions, and we know from our experience today that 936 is already working well with 2022 SQL. So we're figuring that there probably isn't going to be any problems, but we just want to, you know, as part of the response on the initial feedback on the case, they said, well, go look at your README documentation for 936. You'll notice that it's not certified. 937 says that it is certified. And I'm like, well, that's helpful, but not helpful at the same time. So I just wanted to try to, again, we're just trying to see what we're going to run into in terms of problems before it happens right in front of our face.
Yeah, looks like I have, I believe, SQL Server 2022, but I'm not 100% sure I'm looking at it correctly.
Yeah, 2025 just recently got released for general acceptance, so that's why it came up kind of weird because I think it just ended like it's not end of support, but it is end of sale from Microsoft. So they just recently switched it over to 2025, so we got caught by that.
Let's see what Peggy finds. My expectation would be you wouldn't have an issue, but I'm not reading anything. I'm just based on my experience because 936 probably came out before 2025 was generally available.
Yes, that is correct.
Which is why it wouldn't have been certified at that time.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we figured as well.
You finding anything, Peggy?
I'm just looking, the SQL JDBC Forge RIC is definitely mentioned in the 937 doc. And Eric, I did pull up your case. So what I'd like to do is let me just look at the details that were provided in your case, and I'm going to go back and confirm. And I think, Rob, I'll circle back with you. I think we've got a 2025. We can probably test that adapter as well. Because what the certification piece of it, Eric, it's definitely not certified in 936, definitely is in 937. But like I said, just because we didn't have it to certify it doesn't mean it wouldn't be functional. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of take a look at the case, make sure that we get all of your questions answered, and then I can send you an update via the case as well, just to make sure we get everything dotted and crossed for you.
Yeah, that would be perfect, and that would help. The rest of this meeting to not take up with all of the rest of my questions.
No worries. Well, and feel free, since you have a case, feel free to add all your questions in there since I have the case number, and I'm going to add myself to it.
Yeah, they're pretty much all in there to begin with.
Perfect.
You'll notice that a lot of the ones I've been asking already have just basically been like bullet number 1, bullet number 2. So just feel free to look at the case. I tried to be as thorough as I could in there based off of some of the things that were being raised, not only by our infrastructure team in-house, but also some of our little generative AI tools that we're doing research with and trying to figure out where our hurdles are going to be so that we can kind of document the risks up front and be prepared for them.
Gotcha. Absolutely.
Okay, I can go back on mute now.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to put you back on mute, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Peggy, can you look at Jim's question? I don't think.
Yes. You're talking about Red Hat 10 and newer Java. Are we talking 21 and above, Jim? Is that what you're asking about? If it is, okay, perfect. Definitely we are planning some enhanced support in 938. So I would keep a watch on that and our postings for that release when it's made available. So we'll definitely have some additional levels of support for the higher Java in there. Oh, and you have a case? Perfect. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. These were some great questions. Glad that Peggy and Rob were able to address some of these. Any additional questions for Peggy or Rob? I'll give you a second if anybody has any. And then just in the meantime, as again, just a couple of reminders, we hope that you guys will be joining us in New York this August for Summit. Like I said, please let me know if I can answer any questions for you. We'd love to have you guys. It's going to be a great 2-day event, and we're super excited about it. Again, you will receive a copy of this recording, and along with any material that Peggy and Rob and myself are able to share with you, that will also be in the email that you receive later today. So be on the lookout for that. And Peggy, Rob, I want to thank you both for presenting today. Oh, there was a question that just came in, so I'll let you guys take that one.
Sure. Are you talking about the WS Servlet URL calls that used to be self-service directly to the reporting server, that style, or something different? And using WS sign-in for login pages. I'm not 100% sure I follow. Twinette, what I would suggest, since we can't get to the details of it, what I would suggest is definitely open up a case and let us know specifically what you're talking about. I'm assuming from the self-service type call, you may be referring to the old WS Servlet URL calls where we would allow FOCUS execution, and possibly the WS sign-in for login pages. You may be referring back to a custom sign-in page or the WS sign-in action, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm understanding it correctly.
I believe you were correct, Peggy.
Okay. Okay. So in order to answer you correctly, that sign-in action would definitely be a function, but I'm not sure if how you are configured today, and if you're looking at it in terms of upgrading and potentially still using self-service type calls. The most common that I've seen those before in the past, yeah, I get it. Your users aren't registered. Understood. What I've seen with those in a lot of the older applications, the call to WebFOCUS or WebFOCUS reports would have been made with a URL or a servlet call, specifying a particular user ID and password on that URL to allow that report to execute and then return back to the calling page or calling application. That is still done. You may want to look at potentially modernizing that a little bit and using a RESTful call. You could still do a singular execution ID on that RESTful call, and your user doesn't have to be in the repository. They would be what we would refer to as an embedded user. But I would look at potentially looking at the RESTful call to take a more modern approach with that, if that's something you're open to. But you can definitely open a case, and we can definitely help you and guide you. Take a look at the call you're using today, make sure it's still functional, and also kind of guide you to use a RESTful sign-in and a RESTful execution access for those reports that you might be executing on the back end. Does that help?
Yeah, she said excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
And then it looks like Jean also chimed in there, just saying, depending on what release Twinet's going from into the security setup and the admin console is a new thing to experience, but the security works the same. It was just how to set it up in the new configuration, at least for us in one of our old releases. So just an FYI.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you, Jean.
Yes. Thank you, Jean. All right, guys. Any final questions for Peggy or Rob? These are great. Thank you guys for being so interactive with us today. All right. If that is all. Okay, again, we'll try this. Peggy, Rob, thank you so much for your time today, for presenting such a great content. I hope this has all of our customers super excited and ready to make that jump and upgrade. So we want you guys on the latest release. So if you have any additional questions or think of something after the fact, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can put it on the evaluation form that will pop up here shortly and ask, or you can reach out to us directly, and I'm happy to get you in touch with the appropriate person to get any of your upgrade questions answered. So with that, we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you for our July virtual user group.